Hey, good evening. I wanted to make a video about how I stream online, right? So it kind of took a journey to get where I am now. And I think because there was one of the key spots in that, or steps in that journey was kind of not really pushed by anybody. Um, you may or may not know about it, 'cause I don't see it being pushed on D&D Beyond or elsewhere. And I think it's something that should be used by more folks if it's not already. I mean, well, we'll get to that. So how did I get here in terms of how I stream today, right? If you look back through my different modules that I've DM'd, I've done a lot of different ways to try and figure out how I could integrate the best for D&D Beyond and what it gives you in terms of, you know, the character sheets, now the dice rolling, the monster encounters, and the tabletop experience, the virtual tabletop experience that you get from different applications that are out there on the web. And if you read D&D Beyond's forum, you can see people are always asking about when is D&D Beyond going to come up with a tabletop, virtual tabletop, and the answer is always not anytime soon. Um, which is at least an honest one. I mean, it seems with D&D Beyond, what they make is really good, I think. Takes them a long time to get there, right? So, one of the things I wanted to do was kind of show how I got to where I need to be. So, if you look at D&D Beyond's website, right? The one thing it pushes a number of things in their tools, right? You have the encounter builder, you have the combat tracker. Okay, and I'm kind of in that a little bit now. Um, the player app character builder, yep, that's good as well. From a web point of view, they push Twitch and they push the Avrae Discord bot, right? The Twitch extension is nice. I use it. It allows people who are watching your stream to see people's character sheets, how many hit points they've got in real time, that kind of stuff, right? But in terms of using dice rolling and such, right now D&D Beyond is kind of in a disjointed spot. The real only thing they have is this Discord bot, which is plenty of other videos out there that probably show it. Um, I kind of will bring up my Discord real quick. This is a D&D Discord um, channel that I belong to called Draconis, which does everything through the Avery bot. Avery bot. Sorry, slip of the tongue. Um, but yeah, everything uses Avery. So it's a really nice tool, right? Um, you use it in Discord entirely. It will track a whole bunch of stuff. This is the current initiative order that this group is using, right? You can do large groups in here and it will track a lot for you. Like you can see this here probably has what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 player characters fighting roughly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at least different monsters. It's tracking hit points, it's tracking spell concentration, it's automatically rolling dice for you. It does a lot, right? It really does. Some of the negatives of this thing, though, is that, and probably the biggest, is learning the syntax of how to use the commands for Avery can be a steep climb. Absolutely be a steep climb, right? And because of that, once you've used it a lot, sure, it's nice, right? But you're always looking up commands. You're always trying to check for typos of the command, and when you mess one up, you got to go back and re-roll and all that and change things, and it can be a bit convoluted to say the least. So in some ways, I feel like it's it harkens back almost to when I was a teenager, or I should say my early 20s, I guess, when I was in college still, before the internet. Man, that sounds old. Before the internet really existed in its current form, and you were kind of in a pre-internet stage where the different mainframes of the universities were hooked together, and you could have some communication, but it wasn't the internet as we know it today. And there was these things called MUDs that were on the internet on different mainframes at different universities. And I think it stood for multi-user dungeon. I don't know what the S stood for, but doesn't matter. Where you're playing these D&D like games in real time with people across the world, and it was all text-based, very simple text-based commands and real-time clocks and the whole thing. It was an interesting time. The commands are even more complicated than those, but it feels like that you're constantly typing commands. Things are happening because of it. The syntax, like I said, and the learning curve is high. It feels like to a certain extent you're fighting as much as that the bot does more good than bad. Don't get me wrong, but there are definitely times where you're fighting the bot because of the interface of it, the text-based only interface of it, right? And but it gives you a lot of information about what spells being cast, how many hit points, it pings people. I mean, it does a lot of good, but you are fighting it sometimes, like I said. Okay, so I tried using that a bit, and again, the issue is this is not really connected to Roll20, which is not connected to your tabletop. You're still in this phase where you have like two or three tools and they're all over the place, right? All right, so now's my plug on how to fix all this if you want to really use Roll20 in tabletop. So I still say I don't see D&D Beyond really pushing this. I think it's a third party thing. I've only looked so deep into it. But the real key here is this app here called Beyond20, right? And you can use it with Chrome, and I'm going to just read this here. Is it Chrome and Firefox? I don't remember. I use Chrome, so I'm not sure. Well, you can look at it. It at least uses Chrome. I was going to say Fire. Let me look at the home. Let's see. So it integrates D&D Beyond character sheets with Roll20, Foundry, Vulture, Tabletop, and Discord. I never used it with the Discord part yet, but that's okay. Um, Here it is. It uses Chrome and Mozilla. Okay, fine. This I think is where you need to go to. It's simple to install. Once you have it installed, all of a sudden you got everything tied together. Why do you have everything tied together? Because what will happen is if you go into a character sheet, you go into one of your character sheet, you can roll the die in D&D Beyond, and it will pop up here. Now I DM all my stuff, so I can't demonstrate that per se. I don't think it would work. Let me go back and take a look. Let me just grab someone here real quick. I think because I'm not a character in here, I doubt it will work. But if I did a roll here just for giggles. No, I'm not a character in here, so it's not going to work. You got to have a character token in there, and I didn't set that up ahead of time. But theoretically, you would roll your dice in D&D Beyond like you normally do, and the roll pops up over here in Roll20. So let me go back to where I was there for a second. As a DM, which I'm usually doing online, if you do something in my encounters, just give me something. This is where I was before. And you take your monster and your encounter. So now, if you roll something here, let's roll a sword. Bloop. You roll it here. There it is over there. Let me move this over a little bit. In roll 20, right? So it's saying, yep, there's your roll. You spun a 23. You can see the breakdown. If you say that's a hit and you want to roll damage, boop, it pops over there in D&D Beyond, right? So now you've actually tied everything together, right? You've tied everything together, and you can sit there and have people use your character sheets in D&D Beyond, right? And you can set this up by, and there's websites that tell you how to do this. I don't want to go into the whole how to set it up, but maybe I will. But in a future video. But basically, you know, you install the app. Now you're rolling on your character sheet in D&D and Beyond. The DM is using the is using. Let's look at this for a second. So because the character's using the character sheets, they're gonna show up in the Twitch extension, right? Um, you as the because of the combat tracker and the encounter builder, if you're building your encounters and then running them and not really using the primitive setup that D&D Beyond has right now, but instead are using this extension to do the rolls, the initiative rolls, the combat rolls, the saving throws, they are all going to appear in Roll20 or other tabletops that Beyond20 supports. So now this is translating to this. You get the ease of use that D&D Beyond is building for you, and you're getting your virtual tabletop for your characters. Now, that being said, there are things that it's a plus minus type of thing. If you can compare it to the Avrae bot, right? The bot tracks more for you that D&D Beyond makes, no doubt about it, right? But the text interface is clumsy, just flat out, right? Yes, as a DM, you're going to have to track how long spells are in effect, who has concentration, um, the hit points of your monsters, though I guess you could try and do it here if you wanted to. That's fine, right? But you're going to have to do more manual tracking than the bot gives you, but you're not at times fighting the bot for things it doesn't do or because of your character's mistakes. So when you balance that, and if you have users who aren't the most tech savvy, right? Um, Clicking on stuff on a character sheet, whatever whatever it might be, um, is going to be a lot more intuitive to them than running a bunch of crazy commands. And hey, you actually get to use those dice that you got in D&D Beyond for something useful than cool looking art, right? So I'll put the link in the video, but I just kind of wanted to call it out because, like I said, you look on D&D Beyond, they don't call it out as one of their tools by any stretch. So I think it's something that you just gotta stumble upon and know. So this is kind of my 2 cents of it, right? And trying to pass the word a little bit. Um, that being said, someday maybe D&D Beyond will have their own virtual tabletop and a better combat tracker than maybe what whatever Roll20 or whatever you use gives you. Um, but for now, I really think this like I said, that's to recap, right? It encourages people to use the D&D Beyond character sheets. Because of using the character sheets, your Twitch extension is going to be updated. You can preload your combats in Encounter Builder and make them useful because the spin rolls will also go into Roll20. And it's a lot more intuitive and quicker than what you get today, probably with the Discord bot. If you're doing what that other Discord website is doing, I shouldn't say website, but channel is doing, um, then yeah, right. Doing those huge encounters that I do sometimes in Discord, the Avrae bot is going to absolutely make that probably more manageable for giant encounters, right? It does tracks and so much stuff. If you have a group of 8, 10 characters, all with an individual user behind it, um, yes, I think that's the way to go. But most of us aren't running that kind of and kind of encounter in D&D when we're doing it live or online, right? You got 4 or 5, maybe 6 people. Um, yeah, at the most, right? And this is kind of the way to go, at least in my opinion. Any rate, um, that's all I wanted to show. So I'll put a few links in the description of where you can get the bot and so forth. And have a good night. Thanks.